Welcome to another episode of Expat Hoops, the podcast where we interview the best professional basketball players who have careers in pro basketball leagues outside of the U.S. Today, we welcome Xavier Sewell to the pod. The Germantown, Maryland native played his college basketball at Washington Adventist University and NAIA before heading overseas for Portugal, then to France, and most recently in Norway. We've got a lot to get into with him, so welcome to the pod, Xavier.
Appreciate you. Thank you for having me.
So we've had an interesting discussion off the pod, and I hope we kind of touch on everything that we kind of got off the pod and get it onto the pod. But you kind of have an interesting career. Just very quickly, if you could kind of take us through what your college career was from Mercyhurst at the JUCO level to Washington Adventist at NAIA, and kind of explain to our listeners, whether they're domestic or international, kind of like what the differences are between those levels of college basketball.
Okay, so out of high school, I got a scholarship to go to Davis and Elkins, which is a Division II school in West Virginia. I went to that school because of the facilities. We had a trainer that came from Florida, and he was working with Joakim Noah and Tim Tebow the time that they won back-to-back championships. So that really grasped me in a way of just like, all right, I'm going to be fit. I'm going to be, in shape for the season. I ended up transferring because I just didn't feel like it was a good fit for me. I mean, a lot of people transfer and go through different things. I went to Mercyhurst Northeast, which is a junior college in Erie, Pennsylvania. I would say the junior college level is more so like everybody's out for themselves. Like you get a coach, you got players, but even our coaches are not as, for lack of better terms, locked in as much as they should be as like a Division II coach or a coach that's already certified or at a university. So going to the JUCO, it was like so temporary. Like players was playing, rotations would always switch and things like that as well. So after my first year at Mercyhurst, I went to the hospital, had a kidney failure almost, and tried to come back. And they tried to basically say that I failed my classes in the spring semester. So I wasn't able to come back to the school the next year because of my grades. So that kind of took a hit to my grades. So I couldn't really get into the next school the way I wanted to. I'm applying to all schools. I'm emailing coaches, trying to do anything I can. I probably emailed every coach in the whole states. But after that, it went to a point where it was, all right, I got to find my next move. So I started talking to Washington Adventist, Coach Sullivan Phillips. When he worked there, he was an assistant coach. He started talking to me in the summer, and he was like, do you have a school? And I said, no, I don't have a school yet. So he was like, come to a workout and then talk to the head coach, and we'll see, some things and stuff like that. And then that's where I met Coach Patrick Curry, and he's now down at St. Thomas University. And he was just a great coach. He knew what to do. And a coach that knows his X's and O's as well as getting an understanding of the player was a better dynamic for me. And it just worked out to mesh.
So you did have a really highly successful college career towards the end at Washington Adventist. But at what point in time did you really kind of get the idea that, you know what, I could still play professionally, albeit whether it's overseas, and kind of like who turned you on to it and sort of, if anybody, or was it something that you kind of found about on your own and just decided to pursue that path?
I feel like growing up, I was always an athlete. Like I played baseball for 10 years. I played I started basketball in the 10th grade, and then I played football as well. So I wanted to always use my athleticism to be a professional in whatever sport it was.
And so how did you decide to go internationally, essentially?
Okay, so I decided to go international because it was like at a certain time, I feel like when you're doing a sport, like you have to like devote everything to it because there has to be a goal at the end of it. So around like 11th, 12th grade, I'm like, like I'm working out. Like one thing that my mom always given me is her hard work ethic and her ability. So just having that in itself just is like, all right, I'm gonna be a pro and I'm gonna make it and nothing can stop me.
So getting to that point where you're graduating from Washington Adventist and to your first overseas job, take us through what that process was like, specifically where you landed and what happened next.
All right, so when I was done at Washington Adventist, it kind of ended a little shaky because We went to South Dakota for nationals. We made nationals, being ranked the top 25 team in the nation. And COVID hit. Literally, COVID hit while we're in the middle of our game. And they canceled the game, and everybody's going back to the hotels and flying back home. So when we got back, everything was on Zoom now. We're trying to figure out what this COVID thing is. And an agent hit me up, my agent, Jordan Pierce. He's out of California. He hit me up, talked to me a little bit, and I talked to him just trying to grasp is he a genuine person? Is he authentic? And how could he help me get to the next level and things of that aspect and that nature? And we went to Portugal first. And we went to Portugal first maybe in like December, because like it was COVID time, so it's limited jobs. Certain countries are letting you in with a COVID card, certain countries are not. So I was lucky to be able to get into Portugal. I got into Portugal. First game was like right off the plane. I got there, landed. We had a practice that night, and then the next day we had 2 games back to back, Saturday and Sunday. I played great. I had 30 in both games, and then it was like a lock from there forever. And then so after those 2 games, we went into a little break because it was Christmas. I got there December, and then COVID hit again, and then we had to come back home, hit a reset. And then so I'm at home at this time wondering, when am I going to go back out? When am I going to be able to, play for another team? And then the Sampanese team called me back in April, and they were like, we're going to have a restart in like the next 2 weeks. Are you able and you ready to go? And I said, yeah, I'm ready to go. So then we went back, and I played from April to June, and we made the playoffs, and we lost the first round.
So definitely a really interesting period of time there when you're trying to get your career off the ground. But if you could kind of take us through what your experience was like in Portugal, even though, like you said, it was kind of stop, start, and you were definitely there to work, as you kind of attested to with the amount of points you put up. But off the pod, we kind of talked about how, at that point in time, low wages. It's your first job. On the one hand, I'm sure you're happy to have a start in professional basketball, but this is also a period of time with COVID where we're having to stop, start, and relatively low wages. If you could kind of talk about that experience as well as trying to get to know a new place that you've presumably never been to before.
So me coming from Washington and Venice, it's a very small school, NAIA, like NAIA level, I would say it will go NCAA, and then NAIA is like the little brother. So coming from a school like that, me knowing that in general, like I have to have my mindset says it's not going to be anything of what I expected. Like certain dudes that's coming from like a Florida, George Mason, as we talked about, they're going to get higher pay. They're going to get the better jobs just off the fact that they went NCAA. Like I've had a couple overseas coaches ask me, why did you never go to NCAA or D1 or stuff like that? And we can get into that as well. But coming out of Washington and Venice, I just had a chip on my shoulder. Is like, be patient. You know what I'm saying? Like you're not going to get what you want automatically. Nothing was ever handed to you. Look at your college career. It was never handed to you. You had to fight. You got here. Now it's just another fight again. And the low wages. So we started off in Portugal for like $400 a month. Maybe even a little less, but so I was there for a half a month to begin with, so I didn't really get anything because of the COVID. Came back home, and then I was there for 3 more months, 2.5. And 1 week through the whole week, we had to be on COVID watch, so we couldn't even leave the house. And I was with 5 teammates in the house, and it might have got a little jumbled a couple times and stuff like that. And I would say about Portugal, it's like, if you're in a room with 5 guys and like everybody has their room, if I have my TV on, he has his TV on, you have your TV on, like the electricity might shut off, or like, your water might get cold, things of that nature.
So it's a little rough.
Definitely is.
We have merch. Head over to the Expat Hoop store where you'll find t-shirts, hoodies, masks, coffee mugs, pint glasses, and more.
It's one of many ways you can show support for the podcast, so head over there and pick up some merch. That link below is in the video description, or you can head over to our website, expathoops.com, and click merch. We offer a couple of different Expat Hoops logos, and we have men's, women's, and kids sizes, so you can get something for everyone.
It's certainly, like you said, a grind at this point. You do make your way through it's a condensed first year, but it is your first year nonetheless. Next year, you're headed off to France to play in their 3rd division. We talked a little bit off the pod that this was actually on a trial period. Your first one in Portugal was actually a contract. from the outset, but this is your first time on a trial period, and it's in France's third division. Where were you, and take us through that season?
So coming off the Portugal season, I felt really good because of what I put up and the things that I did. And going into France, I came into France a little injured. So I rolled my ankle probably a week before I left training. And we was running hills, and I came down the hill, and I came down the hill wrong. I rolled my ankle, but job has to get done at the end of the day. So I went over to France, and beautiful country, by the way. And I went to France. The major difference about France to Portugal, I would say, is just the athleticism and the big men, all around just the full gameplay. Like the second league of Portugal is good, don't get me wrong, but it's a lot more athletic people in the France division for sure.
So where were you specifically in France? And we'll get into it from there.
I went to Dax, France, South France.
And so what was it like in terms of reception from like basically like the locals? Like what was it like? What was basketball like in France there specifically?
I would say it's good. The locals are very aware of the basketball team. They come out and play. Dax, France is more like a city for the elderly because it's very therapeutic around there in South France. Like they have a lot of spas and things like that. So the elderly were actually coming out to the games. It was pretty good.
So it's kind of interesting. We could certainly have a podcast discussion on this subject on its own, but any longtime listener will know that we've talked a lot about how the French are essentially kind of making basketball a point of emphasis, and we're starting to see it in years past, but also presumed top pick in the draft is going to be from France, and there's going to be another one in the first round more than likely too. So it's just interesting to kind of get a flavor for what basketball is like in that country specifically, especially as an American kind of on the outside looking in, so to speak. So that's kind of where I was hoping to go there. But off the pod, we also kind of talked a little bit about how the pay was in relation to what it was like in Portugal. If you could kind of touch on not only the pay, but also in terms of what your living accommodations were like in France there as well.
Okay, so Portugal, like I told you, I was living with 4 other teammates, so it was 5 of us in the house. You know, things could be a little rough. You seeing your guys in the house all the time, but France was a definite big jump. Probably $1,000 plus in dollars change on that difference. And the housing was, I had my own apartment, own car, and it was a very nice flat.
And it's all to yourself?
All to myself.
There we go. That's what we're talking. That's one thing that meshes a little bit with what we've heard from France is you're well treated, well paid.
Yes, sir.
So that completely matches. So,
and they also help you get French classes as well to speak French.
There you go. So not only are you in a area that likes basketball, they accommodate you very well, not only in terms of off the court, but in terms of the language barrier potentially as well.
For sure.
Thanks to SeatGeek for sponsoring Expat Hoops. We recently became a brand ambassador for them. SeatGeek is a ticket app that takes the confusion out of buying tickets. They offer a 0 to 10 score on each ticket to know if you're getting a good or a bad deal. Green means good, red means bad. You get the idea. It's a really easy way to get tickets to events. Plus, our viewers get $20 off their first ticket purchase with the Expat Hoops code. Click the link in the description to download the app. Remember the code Expat Hoops, EXPATHOOPS, all one word, to save yourself $20 off your first ticket purchase with SeatGeek.
In our house, when we use a VPN, we are sure to use NordVPN. NordVPN secures up to 6 devices and is compatible with Windows, Mac OS, Linux, Android, iOS, and even your Wi-Fi router. Plus, it's no risk to your wallet. Head over to their website for pricing or contact customer support 24/7. And remember, your purchase is always safe with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Click the link in the video description to use our code and make sure you're secure with NordVPN.
After Portugal and France, you just finished your last season here in Norway. Take us through what was the path that got you to Norway and kind of exactly how this last season went for you on and off the court.
So I would say the path to getting to Norway was after France, just looking for a next opportunity. France didn't go the way I wanted. I was injured when I got to France, like I previously mentioned. So it tailed off a little bit. So the next thing coming up was France, where I was on a tryout as well. It was a 2-week tryout just to make the team, whether I do or not. And after I made the team, it got into a situation of where, all right, we got our team together. Now let's piece together and make our connection. So we played our first game. It was kind of bad because I couldn't play and the other American couldn't play because of the visa situations. And normally visas sometimes take long unless you start them early. But we didn't play. We got beat by 40. So you got to see how, like, what the team's missing, like how we would move if we were on the court and things like that of that nature. So I found out, like, we really had no center. We really have no four-man as well. Also, because when you're overseas, a lot of dudes like play basketball, but they also have jobs. Like, this is their kind of, they love to do it, but hobby type of situation. So we had a lot of that. Really no center to be substantial in games, so it affected us.
And so within the league, I think we were kind of talking a little bit off the pod about this, that your particular team didn't necessarily have bigs, but what was it like kind of throughout the league in Norway, in terms of having those, those 4 guys or those 5 guys, depending on which team you're talking about?
So teams in Norway, I would say the top 7 teams, we were 8th seed, and even some teams under us, like, they have big men. So you have Tromsø, they have a Serbian big, very good. They have Gimle, they won the championship this year. They have a very good center, very experienced older man. We have Bayram. They have another national player. Centrum had a national big man. So a lot of teams had good big men, and we just couldn't really box out all the time to get every rebound. It was a struggle.
And one of the things that you've done a really good job so far of going through this episode and kind of like highlighting not only what the pay was at each one of the stops so far that you've had, whether you were on a trial period or not. This past season in Norway, as you indicated, it was a trial period to start, but what was the pay like? You were also in Oslo, so what was your accommodations like as well?
So the pay from France to Norway wasn't that much far off, actually. So it was actually pretty decent pay. The housing as well, they take care of you same way. And as far as transportation in Oslo, you're in the capital, so you get anything access. So the train is normally down the street. It wasn't too far. You could get to the train, the bus, and you can also take taxis as well. But I wouldn't recommend the taxi. But yeah.
And why is that? Let's just go there.
So the taxis are just expensive. Like, a lot of things in Norway is expensive. The food's expensive, the clothes expensive. And even if you want to get like a piece of candy, your candy is probably like $4 as opposed to what we would spend here, like 2.
Interesting. So you're still relatively recent in your career. This is 3rd season in. Where are you looking for your career kind of to go next? If you can control exactly where you were going to go, what's the next logical leap for you as you're trying to kind of navigate the ladders of an overseas career?
I feel like the next logical move would be a situation where I can be around very, very highly competitive basketball, like maybe a G League, or as far as moving up in Germany or Spain or France as well, higher up in those leagues, just to actually show dudes that, I'm here to stay. You know what I'm saying? So if I was to speak on my own, of course, I would say, like, the end is the NBA, because we don't do this unless we're not trying to get there.
So another thing that actually kind of we talked a little bit about, and this is not necessarily going to neatly fall into a season or anything, but and you kind of alluded to it too with some of your teammates in Norway, that depending on where you are, not only are your teammates, maybe semi-pro or doing as a hobby, but also in terms of your journey, in terms of trying to work your way up the ladder. Take us through a little bit about kind of like what the commitments have been in terms of, obviously you've got a career that you're trying to work your way up professionally as an athlete, but what have you also been trying to do kind of simultaneously? I think we're kind of talking about off the pod a little bit of like kind of the grind that it is in terms of where you've been over like the last 3 years as it relates to your professional basketball career. Like, what have you been able to do to kind of piece it all together?
So speaking back on knowing that I come from a small school, you have to know the pros and the cons of the situation. So me coming out of Washington Venice, it was already known to me that, I have to low-key look for a job, because at the end of the day, you need a B plan. You can't have no money. You can't just be sitting around the house not making no money. Like it's not acceptable. So already having that mindset, just having a backup plan and having a job here, just in case that I do leave, I'd let them know as well. So coming through to Portugal after like COVID starts to break down and everything like that, it got easier for me to handle it in a way of like, France was from August to November. So when I came home from November, it was, all right, find a job, because really the next recruiting time won't come until the summer. Like some guys do get picked up and things of that nature, because I got picked up in December myself. So knowing that I got injured and I wasn't able to play, I knew it would be the summertime. So constructing myself to get a job and taking care of, household things and becoming a man.
Xavier Sewell, thank you so much for joining us on this latest episode of Expat Hoops. Your journey from your career getting started, France, Portugal, this last stop in Norway. We're really looking forward to see what you do next. Thank you again for joining us. And if you would stick around and do a couple Expat Extras with us.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, sure.
All right, great. Well, if you're listening on YouTube, stick with us. It might be the next video that plays. But if you're listening on our podcast outlets, make sure you do check out our YouTube channel, where you will find the extra content that we're talking about right now. Hello, and thanks for watching. Be sure to give the video a like, and you can watch more videos over here. You can also click subscribe over here, so you're notified when we have new content here on Expat Hoops.